Tonight, taxing times in federal politics. The government works to sell their Stage 3 tax cuts, while the negative gearing debate makes a comeback. The divide between development and the environment as a North Coast community fights to protect a swathe of land. A water skier dies while competing in the annual Southern 80 race on the Murray River. And survivors pause to remember Australia's worst peacetime naval disaster 60 years on. Good evening, Lydia Feng with ABC News Sunday. Treasurer Jim Chalmers says the government is not considering changes to negative gearing as pressure mounts on the government to do more to address housing affordability. He says the only tax reform being considered are changes to the Stage 3 cuts. But the Shadow Treasurer insists it could still be on the agenda. Here's political reporter Evelyn Manfield.
Lovely to have you in Ballarat. Very big welcome.
Out of Canberra, but unable to escape questions on tax.
What we're doing is putting in place a tax cut for every Australian worker.
The government continuing to defend its changes to the Stage 3 tax cuts as the coalition,
Angus Taylor, welcome to the program,
shifts gears.
We won't support changes to negative gearing. That's their intent. We know they're considering this. Their answers in the parliament on this this week were very wishy-washy.
That's not something that we're proposing, not something that we are considering, not something that we are working up.
Negative gearing allows landlords who lose money by paying out more in interest and maintenance than they're receiving in rent to offset that loss and reduce the tax they pay.
Now is the time for reform on negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount because we are in a housing crisis.
It's not just tax, but the right to disconnect. That'll continue to be a talking point in Parliament this week. The opposition says if it wins the next election, it'll repeal legislation that passed the Senate just days ago, giving workers the right to ignore calls and emails when they're not on the clock without being penalised. But it's another out-of-hours issue that's stolen the limelight. This video published by the Daily Mail shows Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce after falling off a planter box while on the phone.
It is up to Barnaby Joyce to explain the circumstances around this.
People love to jump to conclusions on these things, and I'm certainly not doing that, and I don't think anyone should.
Mr Joyce says he's very embarrassed. He'll be meeting with his coalition leaders this week. Evelyn Manfield, ABC News, Canberra.
The Premier says changes to negative gearing are not the answer to the state's housing woes. Chris Minns says it's a matter for Canberra, but he thinks any policy change should be taken to an election. The state government says its recent stamp duty concessions are already helping first home buyers, but with prices still rising, fewer buyers will be able to qualify.
It's the year of the dragon, said to symbolise good luck. Red envelopes traditionally contain cash, but the Premier's offerings were very fiscally responsible, a chocolate and a business card.
What do you think?
But there has been some good fortune, the government says, for first home buyers.
18,700 people are paying either less stamp duty or no stamp duty, and none of them are paying a land tax because of the changes this government introduced.
In July, the government raised the price threshold at which first home buyers have to pay stamp duty to $800,000, and it allowed buyers who pay up to $1 million to qualify for a discounted rate. Thomas Pantle used the scheme to avoid stamp duty on his $720,000 home in Collerton in Sydney's west.
I calculated that, I'd be able to save upwards of $30,000, which is massive.
But buyers of properties up to $1.5 million no longer have the chance to avoid lump sum stamp duty by paying a yearly land tax. That coalition policy was scrapped by Labor.
In fact, to be gloating in circumstances that they are introducing more opportunities is in fact an embarrassment.
Since Labor first promised the changes, property prices in Sydney have risen by about 11%. That means there's even fewer buyers who'll fit under that $800,000 threshold where they don't have to pay stamp duty. The Premier says he'll consider raising the thresholds, but don't expect any immediate relief.
No, I don't have an announcement about that today.
Chris Minns says he won't be blaming immigration for the state's housing shortage, nor is he seeking a federal government review of negative gearing.
Look, I wouldn't call for that. I think a reasonable person would say give them time to work out their tax policies and take them to the next election.
A federal political headache the Premier's happy not to share. Nick Dole, ABC News, Sydney.
A North Coast community fighting to stop a development on ecologically sensitive land says state planning laws are the real enemy. Byron Shire Council says its hands are tied when it comes to stopping an approved housing development on land that's home to 26 threatened species.
It's the voices in the newspapers. That's what's going to make a difference.
Another day, another development attracting the ire of a coastal community. The latest flashpoint is on the outskirts of Brunswick Heads, where a 130-lot housing development has been approved.
It makes me cry. It's sacred, and it's sacred for a reason.
I've witnessed a lot of destruction of all of our sacred sites around here in the Byron Shire, so for me it's just important that it stays like this.
We need to shed some light on the issue and see what's exposed.
Campaigners have been combing through planning laws for avenues to stop the development, which they say is out of step with modern environmental and social values.
Although this development has been approved under a loophole in planning legislation, the community is really clear that they're going to stand in the way of construction and destruction here.
The developer says it has ticked all the boxes.
How much do you do? You know, we've gone through the process within the architecture of the rules that are set out by the state government and the council.
Communities continue to struggle to balance the need for more housing with environmental protection.
This has not been a pleasant process for me personally, for councillors, particularly, you know, as I see it, that we really do have our hands tied. We have a very limited role to perform here.
A parliamentary inquiry into planning laws in New South Wales is due to start next month. Among issues on the agenda is the ability of councils to block developments deemed a risk to people or the environment.
Wallam, unfortunately, is absolutely characteristic of our failing planning system.
It's an inquiry many feel can't come soon enough. Hannah Ross, ABC News, Brunswick Heads.
Israeli forces claim to have new evidence linking the main UN aid agency in Gaza with Hamas. Troops have revealed a tunnel network running partly under the agency's headquarters, but the UN says the building's been unstaffed for months. It comes as new details emerge over a missing 6-year-old Palestinian girl whose body has now been found.
Heartbreaking horror in Gaza. The body of a 6-year-old Palestinian girl is found in a bullet-ridden car, trapped and surrounded by her dead relatives. Hind Rajab pleaded with rescuers in a telephone call for 3 hours to be saved. Two paramedics were sent, but they wouldn't reach her. The Palestinian Red Crescent has accused Israeli forces of killing them. Hind's mother had been waiting for news, holding her notebook where she'd been practicing her handwriting.
For every person who heard my voice, my daughter's pleading voice, yet did not rescue her, I will question them before God on the day of judgment.
The Israeli military says it's discovered tunnels underneath the main headquarters of the UN aid agency UNRWA in Gaza City, saying it's found new evidence Hamas exploits the UN.
This place is one of the Hamas's intelligence units, where they command most of the combat from here, but from the underground.
UNRWA says it left the building on October 12 and denies knowledge of Hamas activity.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has suggested the next phase of his invasion will be in the southern city of Rafah, the so-called safe zone where more than 1 million Palestinians have already fled to. Israel says it's preparing an evacuation plan, but there's virtually nowhere left for these Gazans to go.
Also waiting for the news of their loved ones, desperate families of hostages taken by Hamas. They're demanding the Israeli government strike a deal now and quickly to bring them home. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
A man has died after falling during a water skiing race on the Murray River. The annual Southern 80 race was called off while the circumstances that led to the accident are being investigated.
It's not for the faint-hearted. Top skiers at the Southern 80 water skiing event reach unimaginable speeds, exceeding 100 kilometres per hour. But after a glowing start, today's race was brought to a standstill and eventually cancelled after a skier came down.
This will affect the community for months to come when everyone goes home. It's an absolute tragedy.
Emergency services rushed to the scene, but the man, aged in his early 40s from regional Victoria, couldn't be revived. The accident happened about halfway along the 80-kilometre Murray River course, which starts from Turrumbry Weir, navigating more than 100 corners before finishing at Echuca Moama. Police are investigating the cause of the accident, but say conditions weren't a factor.
The race had passed all criteria to commence. Water levels were no issue that I'm aware of.
It's not the first fatality in the race's history. In 2017, David Morabito was the 6th person to die at the event in 30 years, sparking the introduction of speed limits.
It's the nature of the beast, really, and everyone runs the risk that runs the race. So if you're prepared to do that, hopefully everything goes well and nothing like this happens.
Another 2 people were hospitalised for leg and upper body injuries in separate incidents at the event. A report will be prepared for the coroner. Kate Ashton, ABC News, Melbourne.
3 people have been killed in a head-on car crash in northern New South Wales. Emergency services were called to the New England Highway in Armidale last night. A man and woman aged in their 20s died, along with a 41-year-old male driver from the other car. Police are investigating the cause of the crash, which also left another woman critically injured.
One car somehow crossed onto the incorrect side of the road. Once again, which car it was is still under investigation, and we'll have more details of that as the days go past.
It's been 60 years since a Navy training exercise went disastrously wrong off the New South Wales south coast. The HMAS Voyager collision left 82 sailors dead. At an event to mark the anniversary, the Navy has apologised for failing those who were left behind.
Under the stars at Jervis Bay, emotions flow, remembering the 82 sailors who died during the nation's worst peacetime naval disaster. For those who survived the Voyager tragedy, the same question remains.
One of the worst questions I ever asked myself, why did I get out?
Gary Perrin and Duncan Fletcher were teenagers on board HMAS Voyager when the ship collided with HMAS Melbourne and sunk during nighttime training exercises off Jervis Bay.
I looked up and I seen the flight deck of the carrier coming over the top of us, and then the screeching of the metal as she cut through.
When we finally got out of the mess deck and up onto the quarter deck, we found out that we didn't have a forward section and we'd been cut in half.
As the decades passed, the Navy has had time to reflect on how it failed its people after the event.
Our Navy was not great at dealing with the mental health scars that you accumulated on that fateful, tragic evening.
We never got any help when it first happened, and I think that was a mistake.
To those who were not well supported, I apologise. Our Navy should have done better.
Families of victims and survivors say they'll continue to gather each year at Jervis Bay.
I'm getting on now, I don't have long to go, but I will always remember my shipmates from Voyager.
Romy Gilbert, ABC News.
Pakistan has been plunged into even deeper political turmoil with allegations of vote rigging and uncertainty over which party can form government. Despite a military crackdown, the party of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan has claimed the most seats, but his supporters fear they may be barred from forming a coalition.
Anger outside Pakistan's election commission in Karachi. Supporters of Imran Khan's PTI party say they fear their election wins are being snatched away.
We will fight for our rights, as we have done in the past.
Their candidates, forced to run as independents, won more seats than any other party. But their leader remains behind bars, and some fear they may not be allowed to form government.
They have stolen our mandate. We are going to have to get stay orders from the courts.
Anger too from the Islamist party TLP, its supporters joining the chorus condemning the voting irregularities. They also fear more vote tampering while the ballot count is delayed. Thursday's elections were marred by violence, a nationwide mobile phone shutdown, and accusations of rigging. Both Imran Khan and his main rival Nawaz Sharif claimed victory on Friday, despite Sharif's party seat count way behind. The chair of Khan's party believes they can find coalition partners to form government.
So we will decide in due course which party we are going to join and how we are going to proceeding. We trust every institution. We are just asking them to respect this mandate of the public. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less.
Trust and hope in a time of upheaval and multiple challenges for a country of 241 million people. Meghna Bali, ABC News.
A former military general accused of human rights abuses and the fatal kidnapping of activists is poised to become Indonesia's next president. 72-year-old Prabowo Subianto is the clear frontrunner in Wednesday's presidential election. More than 2 decades on from his alleged crimes, the perennial candidate is riding a wave of youthful support.
On a hot afternoon in the city of Semarang, Prabowo Subianto is working the crowds. No stranger to election rallies across this archipelago nation, Prabowo, as he's known, is in his 4th straight campaign.
Almost every poll says that we're going to win in one round. But let's not be careless. Let's not be complacent.
This time around, he's reinvented himself to tone down the strongman image that failed to propel him to victory in past elections.
Political elites in Jakarta often scold me for being rude when I talk. I'm a former soldier. This is just the way I am. I don't do sweet talk. I don't talk in circles.
Straight talking, which seems to have won the support of many young voters this time around.
Prabowo is firm, honest, wise.
Prabowo is extraordinary. He has diligently and consistently run for president, despite having failed a few times.
Many weren't even born during the most infamous period of Prabowo Subianto's past. In 1998, as the regime of Indonesia's autocratic leader Suharto was crumbling, the special forces, then under Prabowo's command, kidnapped and tortured 22 activists. 9 survived and returned, 13 were never seen again.
My son was very active. He didn't want to see injustice happening before his eyes.
Payun's son Utok is among the 13 activists who were never found.
Because it's been 25 years, I just want legal certainty on what happened and the whereabouts of my son.
Prabowo Subianto has made comments over the years acknowledging involvement in the kidnappings of the 9 who survived. He said circumstances were different and he was defending the nation, but he's now more dismissive.
They accuse me of doing this and that, a coup plot, abducting activists, killing them, etc. Well, what can I say, huh? This is democracy. If people believe those accusations, simply don't vote for me.
He's never admitted or been directly linked to the missing 13 and their presumed killings. He was, however, dishonourably sacked from the military for his tactics.
Whatever happened back then, Prabowo should not be president. Once he's in that role, our search for answers will be over. There's no more hope to fight.
Payan and the families of the other victims, for now, maintain their search for answers. Monthly protests outside the presidential palace calling for these decade-old cases to be properly investigated. Despite promises to address human rights cases, outgoing President Joko Widodo has made little progress in 10 years. Now his son Gibran is Prabowo Subianto's pick for vice president. The youthful running mate is helping recast the former soldier's image to a new generation with a cute and cuddly style.
It's not position that I'm after, it's not rank that I seek. I just want to see the people prosper.
If Prabowo Subianto can win at least 50% of the vote, then this tilt at the top job will be third time lucky for him. If his two rivals combined can prevent him winning a majority, then he'll have to go to a runoff in June.
Prabowo and his team are desperate to avoid a longer campaign for a runoff poll. And they're increasingly confident they'll seal the victory in one go this week. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Semarang, Central Java.
Billions of people around the world have gathered to ring in the Lunar New Year and usher in the Year of the Dragon. Revellers filled the streets of Hong Kong for parades and colourful dances, the first celebration since pandemic restrictions were lifted. In mainland China, travel numbers are expected to reach historic levels with hopes the annual rush will boost the economy. Lunar New Year festivities will continue for the next 2 weeks. Australian borrowers struggling with rising interest rates look set for some relief in 2024. But for those looking to get into the market, there's little to look forward to. As the ABC's Alan Kohler explains, the affordability crisis is starting to really bite in cities you may not expect.
You're probably aware that house prices went up again last year, even though interest rates kept rising as well. And you won't be surprised to learn, of course, that this made houses less affordable. The house price to income ratio kicked back up to 7.5. But there are a couple of things that might surprise you. Adelaide became the second least affordable Australian city last year. And despite rising prices and crushing interest rates, first home buyers were the fastest growing type of borrower. Here's affordability by city. Sydney's way out in front, of course, as the least affordable Australian city. It's one of the least affordable in the world. But Adelaide has just taken over from Hobart in second place. Hobart, I hear you say? And Adelaide? What about Melbourne? Well, this graph is dwelling value to local income, and the average income in each city is different. Adelaide's median house price is 7.9 times local average income. And when it comes to rent, Adelaide is actually number one, the worst place in the nation to be a tenant. What's going on? Well, put simply, incomes in Adelaide, Hobart and Brisbane are not keeping up with house prices, which are being pushed up by fast rising population and by first home buyers. Loans to them surged 21% last year to be the fastest growing category of buyer. They now represent almost 30% of borrowers. So what's going on with that? Well, that's simple too. The back of mum and dad coughing up early inheritances and politicians showering them with grants and concessions, desperate to appear to be doing something about affordability while actually making it worse. When my wife and I bought our first house in 1980, the average house price was 3.5 times average incomes. Now it's 7.5 times and rising. That didn't have to happen. It's Australia's worst economic mistake.
Australia has thrashed South Africa by 110 runs in a rain-affected Women's One-Day International at North Sydney Oval. The tourists were chasing a revised target of 238 from 31 overs, but were all out for 127. Leg spinner Alana King took 4 for 26. Australia will win the multi-format series outright if it has a draw or a victory in the Test match later this week. A week after delivering a scathing attack on officials, the Western Sydney Wanderers have drawn 3-3 with Newcastle in the A-League men's competition after having 2 players sent off. A double from Lockie Brook had put Western Sydney ahead, but when Tate Russell gave away a penalty and was issued a second yellow card, the Jets were able to equalise from the penalty spot and then take the lead. But a stoppage time header from captain Marcelo helped the Wanderers claim a point. In the A-League Women's, a late winner from record Matilda Chloe Lagazzo helped Western United to a 3-2 win over Brisbane. American surfer Caitlin Simmers has beaten Australian Molly Picklum in the final of the Pipe Pro in Hawaii. The 21-year-old Picklum had a perfect 10 ride in her semi-final win and headed into the final with confidence. 18-year-old Simmers won a hard-fought decider by just over 2 points to claim her 3rd victory on the championship tour. In the men's final, Baron Mamiya scored a perfect 10 during his win over fellow Hawaiian John Florence.
We were so blessed today to have Pipeline in its absolute best day of days, and to be out there with Katie, it was amazing. And yeah, I don't know, I just was enjoying every moment and just enjoying the rides.
Some of Hollywood's biggest stars have descended on the Gold Coast to celebrate the nation's Cinema and Television Awards. A horror film by 2 YouTubers took out 8 actor awards, while homegrown talent Margot Robbie received the Trailblazer Award for her body of work.
Glitz and glamour galore on the Gold Coast. Celebrated stars and up-and-comers alike honoured at the Actors.
Our amazing cast, our amazing crew were able to do it our way, the Aussie way, and it was the best decision we ever made. So everyone, let's keep working together, helping each other.
Horror flick Talk to Me took home 8 awards, including Best Film and Best Screenplay. Emotions were high for one of its stars, who won Best Lead Actress.
I don't think that I can do what I do without the kind of hard work and passion and artistry of every single person who works on a project.
First-time actor Aswan Reid won Best Lead Actor for The New Boy at just 11 years old. On the small screen, the ABC's The Newsreader took out Best Drama Series. Id Star won Best Lead Actress in a Drama.
This is really special because I actually graduated high school in this auditorium.
Book adaptation The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart walked away with 4 gongs.
This is the series' 12th nomination.
But all night there was just one name on everyone's lips. Even Cate Blanchett's Barbie-worthy outfit couldn't upstage the woman of the moment.
To one of my and everyone's favourite performers and people, Margot Robbie.
The Hollywood star won the prestigious Actor Trailblazer Award, as well as the International Award for Best Lead Actress in Film for her role as Barbie.
To be here on the Gold Coast receiving this tonight, knowing that all my wildest dreams really did come true, is unbelievably special to me, and I cannot thank you enough, actors, for giving me this moment.
A Gold Coast girl at heart with a passion for local film and television.
But the biggest reward for me is having the privilege to blaze a trail for others to traverse.
Julia Andre, ABC News, Gold Coast.
Now let's take a look at the weather. In Sydney today, it was partly cloudy. Daytime temperatures hit 27 in the city and Penrith. Overnight lows were generally near or a little above average, while maximums were mostly below average in the east due to cloud cover and showers. On today's satellite, a trough extends across the north of the country through to a low in northern Western Australia, cloudy along the eastern seaboard and Tasmania. On tomorrow's chart, a coastal trough around the north coast is weakening. Meanwhile, a high-pressure system over the Tasman Sea is moving towards New Zealand. Around the country tomorrow, clear skies over Melbourne, Perth and Adelaide, a possible shower in Brisbane, storms likely in Darwin. For the northeast, partly cloudy with a high chance of showers and storms. In the southeast, partly cloudy over the central tablelands, but sunny elsewhere. To the west, an afternoon shower and storms likely in the far west. Off the coast, winds 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 2 metres. In Sydney tomorrow, mostly sunny, a top of 29 in the city and 32 in Penrith. The sun will rise at 6:25. And further ahead, hot and sunny on Tuesday, daytime temperatures between 31 and 34, a high chance of showers and storms from Wednesday to Friday, then a medium chance of rain for the rest of the week. And that's all from ABC News Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your evening.